In this segment, we'd like to discuss shooting safety as it pertains to loading the arrow correctly and also examining your arrows during the shooting sequence. We're going to use this great tornado right here as part of the example. The first thing we like to do before we even put the crossbow on our shoulder is demonstrate that we've actually cocked this crossbow correctly. Okay? And now we have a loose roller rope cocker in our hands. There is a tendency to want to do this, which is put the rope cocker over your shoulders when you're shooting multiple times. The scenario that develops now that's bad for safety is that as you're bending over, oftentimes what can happen, as you can see right here, is that this gets wrapped around the string. Of course, if you forget or don't notice that it's there and you pull the trigger, then you have the string moving around your neck at over 300 feet per second, and that's a bad situation. So we never recommend putting the rope cocker around your neck. Once you've done cocked the crossbow, we take it off and we set it aside in a safe place or put it on the ground getting ready for your next shot. So the crossbow is cocked. Now it's time to load it. We take our arrow with capture knock. Pardon me, it's this one right here. We inspect it that the knock is indexed correctly. Careful observation is that we put the crossbow arrow in. We have full engagement of the capture knock. And now we're ready to start the shot sequence. So number one is elbow against our ribs. Number two is our hand is right here in the forearm, and we can actually wrap our hands around the vented forearm. What we don't want to do is have our fingers up here above the safety flange. That's called a finger flange. Number one, keep our fingers below the barrel. Number two, keep our thumb below the barrel. Number three, don't put our hand up here in front where our fingers can get above the barrel. So the proper way to safely shoot this crossbow is put our hand right here, wrap our fingers around the vented forearm, and now we can flip the safety off and execute the shot. That's the safe way to shoot a crossbow. It's also the safest way to keep your roller rope cocker out of the way. Let's remove this arrow. Blah, blah. Crossbows are incredibly accurate. In fact, it is a lot of fun to actually take a crossbow and shoot 20 yards, 30 yards, 40 yards perhaps, and see a group wad up into a tight space. That is a really impressive thing to do at 20 and 30 yards, to shoot a group that's smaller than a tangerine. So in this target right here, what we see is we have someone that's taken some shots, says with some tremendous accuracy, using a red hot arrow, capture knock, and a tornado. And you can see here that at first glance, I would be very impressed with that type of shooting, especially if it's freehand. But on further examination, what you're going to notice is that this arrow has been chipped. This knock, if I didn't pay attention to this, after I inspect every single arrow, every single time, I may shoot that crossbow arrow and introduce a partial dry fire or damage the arrow even further. So what I can't see, however, is that inside the target, okay, which is approximately about 10 inches of penetration, what I can't see is what's happening here at the front end. As I pull those arrows out, even though the arrows all look like they're not touching specifically from the back end, inside the target, something's happening. So when I examine these and I pull them out one at a time, the very first arrow that I pull out, oh, look what I noticed. I see that I have one of the arrows has jammed or hit inside the target. The foam material will change the path of the arrow, or the trajectory path will change the path of the arrow. And in fact, what I did notice now is that obviously an arrow came into the target very close to another arrow and scored it right here. Had I not noticed that, that arrow could fail in flight. So it's much better now, even though this is impressive to look at and a lot of fun to do, it's much better for safety and the longevity of your equipment to select 5 individual contact points or aiming points and shoot into a 5-spot target. That's the best and safest way to shoot your Parker crossbow.